you can shadow all of the best people and you can learn the nuggets and you can find the best one-liners and you can, memorize the best objection handles, but there is absolutely nothing that replaces experience, right? So it's how do you get to your first 1,000 customer interactions as fast as humanly possible, right?
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Door-to-Door Podcast. It's going to be a good one today. Hailing all the way from Maple Syrupville. Just kidding. We have Timothy Veldman, Regional Manager from Firefly Solar Co., crushing it up in Canada on the podcast. Timothy, welcome on, brother. Happy to have you.
Thanks, bro. Happy to be here.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. You're also a member of our elite program, yeah?
I am, yeah. Haven't been as tapped into it as I would like to be, but definitely want to catch a few of the workshops throughout the rest of the year here.
Yeah. How long have you been an elite member?
I joined the league at Door-to-Door Con. I was a stage caller.
Gotcha. Dude, there's so much value packed into the elite. I just had a podcast the other day with one of our elite members over in Texas. He was in it for a little bit and then rejoined at Door-to-Door Con and he said he took it more seriously this go around. And he was like, dude, and I agree with him. He was like, there's a lot of perks to being in the league, but like just going and associating with the people that are in the elite as well. Like the network you gain, the association is worth the admission price alone. So have you been to any of the events since you've joined?
I haven't been yet. No, I was going to go to Hawaii, but I had it was like my father-in-law's 60th birthday cruise kind of thing that coincided with it. So I wasn't able to make it, but a little bit more interested in the boot camps personally. Definitely want to be attending as many as I can kind of throughout the rest of the year.
For sure, dude. Those boot camps. Yeah, I love my job because I get to immerse myself with the members like yourself who come. I get to do testimonial videos. I get to be in the background, filming and just listening. And it's some good stuff. How long have you been in the industry?
I've been in the solar industry now for coming up on 3 years. I've been in door-to-door industry for about 8.5 years now.
Oh, wow. You're a veteran. We'll get into that. But we have people that show up to these events, and I feel like a lot of people, when they get to a certain tenureship, so to speak, a certain length in the industry, they're like, oh, what more can I learn? You know what I mean? And then they go and they're like, wow, that was really good. Sam's just a wizard, bro. He knows what he's doing. It's cool.
Yeah. I've found that every event that I've attended, whether it be a little solar conference Sam hosted in Miami a couple years back, or, Door-to-Door Con, Solar Con, even if you feel like you're pretty complete, there's always a couple nuggets that you can find. Right. And so
always.
It show up, find the thing that applies to your current situation, take it home.
Exactly. And you show up, you meet people you didn't think you'd meet, you build relationships and connections that can serve you 5 years down the road. You never know. It's really cool, man. But 8 years door to door. Give me the rundown. How did you get? Well, first of all, are you from Canada?
I'm from Canada. Yeah. Born and raised.
Nice. Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Where you're at now. Is that where you're from?
I'm from a town called Coaldale, Alberta. Actually, I was born on a farm, moved into a small town called Coaldale. It's about 3,000 people, maybe 2.5 hour drive south of Calgary.
Okay.
Real small town, redneck, southern Alberta is where I'm from originally. Moved to Calgary when I was 15. Lived in Vancouver for a couple of years, Toronto for a couple of years. I've lived all over the place, but Calgary is kind of where I've always found home at the end.
Nice, dude. How was your time in Toronto? That's a city that's on my bucket list to visit.
You want the honest answer?
Yeah, give me the honest answer, dude.
Yeah, I hate Toronto personally.
Really?
I know a lot of people up here will disagree with me, but it's the people. I don't like the culture there. I don't like the people there.
Really?
Yeah, the traffic. Not a fan. Would never live there again.
Gotcha, dude. Yeah, traffic alone is repelling. I'm from LA area.
Okay.
Dude.
It's nothing like what you got down there, but it's still bad for us.
Even here in Salt Lake, sometimes it wows me. I'm like, dude, am I back in California? This traffic can get bonkers, but cool. So Calgary's home. I love it. But sorry, yeah, let's jump back. I appreciate the little rundown. How'd you get into door to door, and what industry did you start in?
So I started in telecom. Actually, funny
Mm.
story. I didn't want to get into door to door. I got kind of bullied into it. I worked for my dad. My dad owns like a bricklaying company. So my dad's a bricklayer. Both of my older brothers are bricklayers. I was going
Blue
to be a
collar
bricklayer.
boys.
Yeah, very blue collar background. Economy took a bad churn. This was back in like 2016, 2017. Economy took a bad churn. We were out of work for a few months, and a guy who was living with roommates of my best friend at the time, he was in door to door. He was selling telecom. He was one of their high rollers, and probably every day or every other day when I saw them for like 3 months straight, he would just bully me. I walk in, he says, "All right, how much money you make today?" I'm like, "Hey, I'm not working." He'd be like, "I made $300 today. Screw you." And so he was me for a few months, and I had all the reasons that you've heard probably, and we've all heard as leaders in the space. I just want the consistency, stability of a fixed income. I don't
Yep.
want to take the risk. Salespeople are sleazy. I had all of that loaded up. And, I ended up giving him a whole long list of conditions of what he would have to meet if I were to just come and see him sell. And he ended up getting his manager to agree to him. It was outlandish. He took responsibility. He really saw the potential in me before I saw it myself, I'll say.
Yeah.
And, I went out, shadowed with him one day, and it wasn't the money that hooked me. It was, he knocked on a door, guy opened the door, not interested. And 15 minutes later, he's signing a 2-year contract for TV and internet.
The
And
best.
that kind of made it click for me. It wasn't I want the money from it. It's like I want to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I got into the industry. Very begrudgingly. Wasn't very good in my early days for sure, but stuck it out.
I was just talking to someone about that feeling, and I'm sure you've had hundreds since that moment. But you go out and you knock a door, like when I was in leadership and sales, like I would always tell my reps, I'm like, look, if you just like put in the hours, like you'll find the people that have been like either wanting your product or are just super nice and lay down. But the people that are like trying to shoo you away and then moments later are signing a contractual agreement with you, those are the most satisfying moments when you can take a person from like, get the hell out of here to where do I sign? You feel like that guy, you know what I mean? You're like, damn, I did that just now. Like they didn't want anything to do with this. And my salesmanship, my abilities got them to want to buy. And that's a really gratifying feeling. So that's interesting that's what the hook was for you. It wasn't the money. It wasn't working outside, making your own hours. It was the satisfaction. I feel like that probably, yeah, dude, if that's what hooked you, you probably have had a career, because if you're driven by that, I can imagine your drive is pretty high.
Yeah. And then I remember at the start too, I was like everybody. I was terrible when I started. My very first door, I forgot my own name. I was supposed to say, I'm Tim. I'm here with Telus. I opened with, hi, I'm Timus. I combined them, and then I froze. I realized it. I froze. I just said nothing until they closed the door. And, that was where I started out, and I beat 150 doors a day, 7 days a week for my first 3 weeks to try to figure it out.
Yep.
But, I wanted to quit every day in the early stages of it, right? My first 3 weeks was the hardest for sure. And every day I would talk to my manager at the time, shout out Deep. And he made me make a commitment. He said, okay, you can quit when you're good. He's like, if you quit before you're good, then you just failed. He's like, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it, but you can't quit until you're good at it. So once you have a big week, then you can quit. And, of course he knew what that would mean for me. As soon as I had that first big week, being able to get a paycheck I could have never gotten in the trades, and feeling like I had come over the hill, then I was in it forever,
Totally. You said his name was Deep?
Deep Tacker. Yeah. He actually got deported a few years back, unfortunately.
Whoa.
But he does a lot, he does a lot of over the phone sales into the US. He sells medical tech or something nowadays.
I was going to say, dude, if he's a sales savage, deported or not, location is irrelevant. I'm sure he'll find some gig so he can be successful, but that's wild. So something you said, it's kind of funny. The other day, one of our circle members, buddy of mine, used to work with him at Legacy Power, Ashton Buswell, posted on his story. He was like, whatever you do, he's like, advice to new reps. He was like, 1 year, go all in. Go all in, no half, like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like go all in for a year to figure out if you're good or not. And if you are good, cool. Sales is the career for you. Keep going. It'll bless your life. If you go all in for a year and you get nowhere, cool. Now you have absolute certainty that sales is not the career for you. Go find something else to do, but just don't half-ass it. You're never going to find out. You got to go all in. You got to do it for a long period of time to determine, like Deep said, until you're good. Some people that's 6 months, some it's a year, some it's 3 months, whatever, but go all in until that moment. And then you'll know. And it sounds like you did that. You found out and here you are.
Yeah, Ashton's a man. He came and spoke at our kickoff. Tight with Ashton. Love that guy.
Yeah, dude, he's a G.
Absolutely correct. It's hard for everybody. I feel like one of the biggest misconceptions about salespeople is that there's a sales type. You think like Wolf of Wall Street-esque, smooth talking salesman type of vibe. And what I've really found, in my career, I've been in management for, probably 7 years out of the 8.5 career. And, trained a couple thousand salespeople in the tenure. And the number one thing I found is, there's no type, right? Confidence, charisma, the ability to persuade people, it can all be taught. It doesn't matter who the individual is. If they're willing to put the work in and be coachable, then they're going to be successful.
Totally, dude. This podcast has been cool. I've interviewed a lot of top performers. And there's always two things that I find in common. And if you listen to this podcast regularly, or you've been listening to it since I've been hosting, you'll know this is a repetitive statement for me. But there's two things that I see stick out amongst high performers. Is they have a background in competitive sports, or they have a background in manual labor. Like they're just able to just grit it out, work hard. And obviously you come from a blue collar family laying brick. I'm sure you have that work ethic built into you to where when it gets hard, when it gets not fun, when the weather's not coinciding with you'll just push through no matter what. When doors are slammed in your face, like you just keep working. You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah. How was that background? Oh, sorry, you go ahead.
Oh yeah. I was just going to say, to add on to that, I've got some entrepreneurship periods in my journey as well. I've owned and operated a few businesses, and one thing I love Alex Hormozy. He's goated. He talks about this all the time, and it relates so much to door-to-door, because door-to-door is the only kind of job where it is a very entrepreneurial mindset required. You're completely self-motivated. Mm-hmm. There's very little oversight or micromanagement or supervision when you're out there in the field, and it's all struggle all the time except for small periods of win. And Alex Hormozy talks about this. Entrepreneurship is like the willingness to get kicked in the teeth every single day for an extended period of time to find small respites and then eagerly anticipate the next day, and that's really all it is with door-to-door as well. And, I come from a competitive sports background as well. I played soccer competitively growing up. I used to race motocross, and that competitive element and work ethic is definitely, it's definitely the juice.
Motocross, hey? You used to race motocross?
Did, yeah.
Nice, dude. So did I, man. Actually, I'm picking up my bike from the mechanics after work today, so I'm stoked. That's cool. Yeah, motocross guys they're gnarly. If you can race dirt bikes, you can do anything.
Yeah.
But that's cool. Yeah, you're totally right. When I was in sales management in the beginning, I used to, when I was like recruiting, I used to try to find like that certain type of person, right? Oh, are they charismatic? Are they funny? You know what I mean? And like, you'd think you would come across someone who's serving tables or just wherever. And you're like, oh, you have that personality that would thrive in this industry. And then, you're able to recruit them and they go out and they flop because they're just not hard workers. They're not competitive. They're not self-motivators. They don't have that entrepreneurial mindset. Totally true. Totally true. So kind of going back to what you said, you've been in leadership like 95% of your career in door-to-door. Is that something that you wanted, fell into, got promoted? How did you get into leadership, and how's that journey been for you?
So I got into leadership about a year and a half into my career. Originally wasn't really something that had interested me. I got a promotion to sales trainer relatively quick, couple months in the industry. Really for me, I had actually left the company I was working at, and I did a summer season at Vivint. And that summer season at Vivint, I just screwed around the whole time. I stopped doing the things that were helping me to be successful in the early career. I wasn't working hard, tried to rely on my talent too much. And I ended up getting fired. Super embarrassing story. Shout out to my manager at the time, Bryce Whittingham. I'm sure he'll hear this. He pulled me into the office. He was like, all right, I need all your gear back. And so I gave him my iPad, my binder, everything. And he's like, I need the uniform. I was like, dog, look, this is the only shirt I brought here. He's like, sorry. And so had to, shirt off of my back, getting fired, had to walk out through the main office. Everyone see me walk out without a shirt, like what happened? And it was then I went back to my old company, got back into telecom, tail between my legs. And it was a chat with our VP of sales. He happened to be in the office at the time, and he took 20 minutes and sat down with me and gave me some lessons. And I think it was like really getting fired then is what propelled me towards leadership and really taking this industry seriously, wanting to really grow and make something of myself in it, as opposed to just being like, the cocky rep who did well in one industry. Yeah,
that makes sense, dude. You need to reach a point where it becomes real. You know what I mean? It becomes real, and you realize that even though we're 1099 and all that other jazz, like you got to take it seriously, And when you hit that point, whether it's something you did that like what happened to you, and it's like, okay, well, this can actually be taken away from me. This isn't cool. I'm gonna take it seriously. Or you just come to it on your own. That's when you really propel. That's happened to me as well. Like I was just kind of a sales rep doing decent for 2.5 years. And I hit a point, something happened in my career where I was like, okay, this isn't a means to an end job. This is a career if I take it seriously and treat it as such. And I did. And then it just went straight up. And 10 years later, it's been a ride. But that's cool, man. But so Firefly Solar, you've been doing it for 3 years now. What brought you into the solar industry?
I just before I got into solar, I was working in the fundraising industry. I started my own vendor. We'd scaled it up to 3 markets across Canada. We were Toronto, here in Calgary, and then West Coast, Vancouver. And my business partners on that company started Firefly. So Kyle and Chris Anderson, shout out those boys. And basically they just came to me on a meeting one day, and they're like, hey, so we've started this company. We're starting to gain a little bit of traction here. We've opened up a crazy can of worms, and there's so much money in this. We want you to essentially pull out of this business. We want to close it down entirely and pivot you into the solar space. And so it just happened to be, my business partners at the time started a solar company, and the opportunity was better than what I was currently doing. So we closed it down. We pivoted our entire workforce over onto solar.
Nice, dude. Kind of speak to the audience a little bit about the market in solar. You've been in it for 3 years now. Obviously here in the States, we had the big, beautiful bill. It's big, it's beautiful, and quite frankly, might take a hit on the market. But for people that are in the States and maybe questioning the future of their career in solar because of that, it's still a wild card right now. It's got to go to the Senate. But how's the market in Canada? Is it a secret you don't want people to know about, or?
My mentality is people are going to find out. So might as well give them the juice while I can. Canada's great, man. Canada's a good market. The one thing here, like we're still such in our infancy. Everything's based around, like a government loan. In the industry here, we all want it to end because the amortization is too short. So the monthly payments are high. So right now, like the number one viable market is going to be Alberta, where I'm at. Okay. And there's some viability in BC and some viability in Nova Scotia, but I think something like 80% of Canada's population currently lives in places where the value proposition for solar hasn't gotten there yet. And so as we see things like, new financing products enter into the market and new incentives enter into these markets, we'll start opening up kind of new locations throughout Canada. So really, while the US is maybe on its tail end of the industry, it's been around for 15 years or so down there. We're really just in that initial market adoption phase. Even in the most prominent market for solar in Canada, we're still sub 5% market adoption.
Wow. And you said it's based around a government loan. So are you guys doing power purchase agreements, TPO products? Or are you doing primarily just loans and finances, or what?
Right now, it's all loan.
Okay.
There's no PPAs, there's no TPOs. There's no like traditional long-term solar loans with like a dealer fee attached to it. Right now, every company that's selling solar in Canada is leveraging. It's like a 0% interest government loan that's
Interesting
right now. So a completely different market. Like I've sold in Illinois, I've sold in Texas, and we mostly do like PPAs, and in Texas we're doing some of like the VPAs that are coming out there now.
Yeah.
But very, very different market up here for sure. I would say one of the primary differences between, Canada and the US, in my experience, is the US is a capitalist country, right? Through and through. Nobody likes door-to-door people, but they don't mind salespeople as much, right? You can be pretty on the nose. You can be salesy. You can be a little bit more aggressive. It's a kind of winning the interaction mentality in a lot of these markets, whereas Canada is not a capitalist country by nature, right? Canada is more of a socialist country. We've got universal health care. We've got lots of these government programs. And because the people here are a lot more socialist, there's like a very prominent anti-sales type of mentality that the people up here carry, where, in the US, they'll respect you for being good enough at sales to sell them. Versus here, it's all about playing this like dance, I guess, where the wholesale, you're pretending you're not selling them anything, and you're playing that line, very carefully. And there's a certain level of kind of tact that's required up here, I would say.
Interesting, dude. What kind of volume would you say is like the average? Like, because I can kind of like conceptualize like an average or top producer volume wise in the States per market. Would you say it parallels the US as far as producing goes in Canada, or should you expect people to do less than what because you've sold in Illinois and Texas, so you probably know as well?
I find in a lot of cases, solar performance is unfortunately regulated by income. You get a guy coming from like alarms or telecom, and they got to grind to make 150 or 200 grand in a year.
Oh yeah.
And they can do that on autopilot, working 5 hours a week in solar. A lot of the guys don't produce what they can just because, they have a big week, they get a big paycheck, and then they just kind of take their foot off of the gas, right? But
our industry
up here, like our average rep does probably similar to an average down there, like 5-6 sales a month.
Okay.
Kind of thing. Our top performers up here would do like 15 to 25 sales a month, is kind of that like high end performer range.
For sure.
I imagine pretty similar to down there.
Yeah, for sure. And is the commissions the same? Like, you guys doing the big check Fridays? You get those big banging paychecks? Or are they pretty consistent? Or yeah,
it's different, right? Like, we're a little bit less flagrant with the PPWs that we're charging up here, right? Like you can't, there's not a market in Canada where you can go get away with selling a 4.5 PPW, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that right now, traditionally Canadian solar commissions have been a bit smaller. I would say, shave 25% off of the top kind of thing in terms of commission comparison. Okay. But we'll likely see that change, as the biggest difference in the US is you have all these financing products that help justify it, right? Even right now, the average person who gets solar in our home market, which is the best market in Canada, they're going to pay anywhere from $40 to $60 more per month day one than their energy bill costs, right? So it's all about selling on value. It's all about selling that long-term kind of ideology of prices going up and hedging against inflation. And there's no immediate benefit to the customer, right?
Yeah.
So as we see, new financing products with longer amortization windows and good interest rates, and as we see things like PPAs enter into the market, and it flips on its head, and now when we're presenting this person saves money day one, likely, the PPWs will kind of increase with that and drive some of those commissions up in churn. But right now it's, in order to charge the kind of PPWs to get the kind of commissions you see down there, it would just require a value proposition that's effectively unsellable.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Interesting, dude. Yeah, this reminds me a lot, like what you're saying of, I got into solar in 2015. Reminds me a lot of those days. In its infancy, a lot of potential for growth. at least at this time in Canada, like a lot of the industry was like all the changes that happened from then until now were unforeseen. Seems like it can replicate up there. That's pretty wild. So if you're nervous about selling in the States, hit up Tim Veldman, Firefly Solar. I'm just kidding. Stay where you're at. It's a gold rush right now. Let's kind of just change gears for a sec, 'cause I like to get kind of granular with the top performing guys. Let's talk about sales a little bit. Let's say I was a new hire in your team, and me and you are driving to area. It's my first day. I'm going to shout at you on the doors, and I say, yo, Tim, you've been doing this for a while. You're obviously pretty good at it. What is the biggest thing that I need to focus on right now to become successful as quick as I can?
So like a brand new rep coming into the industry.
First day, brand new, no sales background. We're on our way to area, dude, and I'm about to watch you rip. And that's my question to you.
Man, I'm all about setting accurate expectations. You know, when I started in the industry, I did not get accurate expectations set with me. You know, I tell guys like, look, you're going to want to quit every single day for your next 3 weeks. It's going to be hard. It's going to suck. You're going to suck at it. But, you know, in terms of here is your steps to take to make you be successful is number one, dialing your pitch. And I say dialing, not memorizing. You know, memorize, you can say a pitch and you can struggle through it. Dialing means, you know, I can say this 10 times back to back while there's dogs barking and angry neighbors yelling at me and somebody saying from the inside of the house to come back inside, we're cooking dinner. You know, no matter what's happening, I can get that pitch out 10 times perfectly back to back, because it's really not about what you say, it's about how you say it, right? And until it's so ingrained in me what I'm going to say, I can't even think about how I'm saying it. So like, you know, the very first step before a rep should even touch a door is like a perfect dialed in pitch. And then the second thing is time on doors, right? You can shadow all of the best people and you can learn the nuggets and you can find the best one-liners and you can, you know, memorize the best objection handles, but there is absolutely nothing that replaces experience, right? So it's how do you get to your first 1,000 customer interactions as fast as humanly possible, right? Work long hours, work lots of days in the week, and grind it out until you hit those 1,000 interactions. And if you stick it out to the point where you've talked to 1,000 people in the door, and you practice and supplement that with learning on a day-to-day basis, you'll be successful. Absolutely, dude. I feel like where sales leaders go wrong is they try to lure people in or recruit them based off of like all the highs that this in it, like, oh dude, like look at the money he's making and you'll never have to do. They make it sound like it's like they died and went to heaven. And then they get on their first day and they're like, what the hell did I just do? And then they don't last because they have this false expectation. And I see so many people do that. They just like recruit based off of all the wonders of the door-to-door space. And they're like, yeah, no, it's like, yeah, it's not the easiest thing in the world, but dude, like just think about the money you're going to make. And like, it's like, bro, paint a real picture, even like paint it gnarlier than it really is. And so they get out with this insane expectation, like they're going to be jumping out and, you know, having to fight 300 Spartans right out the car door. And then they realize, okay, maybe it isn't as bad as he said. I can do this. And then it's better. That's the route I would prefer to go. Sounds like you do that as well. That's a good piece of advice, dude. It's just accurate expectations. Because then you also filter out people quickly that don't have it in them versus like throwing shit against the wall, hoping it stick. Like, I don't like that method. It's hard to grow. And it also negatively affects the existing reps when they see bodies come and go, right? Versus like a select few that know the right expectations. Yeah, you understand. Yeah, like I'd rather see somebody quit before their first day than quit after their first 2 weeks when we've invested a ton of training resources into them. Just because they had to discover what it really is for themselves when we could have set those expectations, weeded them out, put somebody who's, you know, really about it on the doors instead. Absolutely. Plus, I feel like it exacerbates leadership burnout, so to speak. You get in leadership and all you want to do is grow. You want to impress your leaders. You want to build office. You want to build teams, big offices. And so you're recruiting, and you're investing all this time, all this effort into people that aren't going to pan out. And then after like 6 months of doing that, of just cycling through people, you're just like, what am I even doing, dude? I'd rather just go sell myself and make money versus doing it the right way and have real sustainable growth with individuals who are going to stay the course and be successful.
Yeah, it's funny, man. Like I see so many people doing that. It's not right at all.
100%. It's like, like the comparison in sales is like sitting with one-leggers, right? It doesn't
Hmm.
matter if you're doing 15 sits every single week.
Yep.
If 13 of them are one-leggers, right? The
Uh-huh.
guy who only does 5 sits, but every single one of them is a qualified buyer is going to outperform you over time. And they're not going to feel like, they're not going to feel slighted by the opportunity. And I feel that's what a lot of like, especially the early days of training, like that early leadership journey where you're just now starting to get guys on your team and you're taking whoever you can get and you're bending over backwards for them and violating your policies for them and not holding
Yep.
up the standard of the team or the culture because you're so desperate to bring people in. All you're doing is wasting energy, making yourself bitter, and your
Hmm.
end result is going to be worse, not better.
Totally, man. Absolutely. What's kind of your process around underperformers? Like, are you slow to hire, quick to fire type of a guy? Sounds like you're slow to hire for sure. But what's your process with someone that's just not producing? They may be like good energy, like they show up to every correlation on time, they never miss a team event, like everything else, they're checking all the boxes are good, but they're just not producing. How do you handle a situation like that?
So I mean, it depends, right? Like, somebody can be not producing because they're lazy, right? They could have all the talent and they're not producing because they're lazy. You might handle that a little bit differently than somebody who's like, hey, you know what? They have a good attitude and they're putting the work in consistently. But I find even some of those guys like that, the example you gave there, if they're at every team night, they're in every correlation, they show up 25 minutes early and they make a big deal about showing the class that they're reading the book that the manager told them to do, like a teacher's pet archetype, right? Even a lot
Mhm.
of those guys, what they don't end up being is truly coachable, right? And so what I want to look at, I'm like, hey, if you have a great attitude and you put the work in consistently and you show up on time every day and you're still not performing, it comes from one of two different places. Either your trainer needs to be corrected because you're not getting effective training,
Mm.
or you're not coachable with the training that you have. And so if I see somebody like that operating, maybe I'll go out with them, I'll shadow them, I'll find some deficiencies, I'll give them coaching, and I'll give them a set of expectations of implementation over the next week. And then the
Mhm.
next week, I'll follow up with them and I'm going to see, did you implement the things that I taught you, right? Are you
Yeah.
coachable enough that I can help you get there? Um, and then if I see the next week they didn't even apply any of the things I told them, then it's all a facade, right? That the showing up
Yeah.
early is to make up for a discrepancy. And so at
Mm.
that point, we cut that person out of the organization. My two things I look for above everything else, and I said this earlier, is what I honestly can't say it enough. It's just like work ethic and coachability, right?
Mhm.
When you're corrected, do you take that to heart and do you change your actions in response to it? Or when you get corrected, do you just kind of keep doing what you were doing anyways, right?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. You mentioned when you just answered that question, you said the trainer. Do you assign, like, do you have like people in your teams that are like their job is to train new reps, or are you referring to managers?
Yeah, so we have kind of like how we're structured. We'd have kind of like a sales rep, and then we'd have like a team lead. So these are
Mm.
like up and coming leaders, guys who they're not taking an override, they're not in a management position, but they're now allowed to, like, they've proven their salt in sales, so now they're able to start recruiting and training a bit, right? And then we have kind of our AMs, managers, regionals.
Gotcha.
So like with those team lead guys, yeah, in a lot of cases, I'm a big believer in, like, sacrifices have to be made for growth. To develop a really good team lead, they're probably going to fail a whole bunch of people on their way up. And
Sure.
what we
Yeah.
say, like, hey, this is a new sales trainer, and likely we're gonna put 100 people on the altar of making them into a good sales manager, right? And it's
Yeah.
just that's an unfortunate reality. And so, but like, let's say that person, they're training somebody and that person's not growing, then we're going to have their supervisor or their manager actually step in and provide some direct training to that individual.
Gotcha. So it sounds like the journey from like a new rep, brand new rep, they have a pretty good system you've implemented to get them producing, to make sure that they have someone that they can lean onto, divvy up the workload, give people that are doing well some more responsibility. It sounds like a well-oiled machine over there. That's awesome.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Cool, dude. Speaking of sales, do you find time much nowadays to still go out in the doors and knock, and are you? Yeah.
I really don't. I actually sold an account yesterday.
Hell yeah.
I sold a little 7 kilowatt system yesterday.
Little
Um,
banger.
yeah. I'll pop one in once in a while, but really my priorities have changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
Overseeing a pretty large team. Really, where my personal focus has gone to is that like next generation of leadership development. Uh,
Hmm.
I'm a big believer in like bandwidth capacity, right? One person can't effectively manage more than, let's say, 10 people by themselves, right? As
Yeah.
soon as you cross that mark, you're not investing enough time in each of the people and still being able to lead from the front and produce sales on the board, which in those like earlier levels of sales leadership is so important, right? Just putting points up, setting the example. And so we've hit a point with the region now where our growth is kind of capped out. The managers have a little bit too much on their plate. And so I've focused my role lately to just, head hunting, but also identifying the early signs of leadership in some of those more entry level positions. Creating a direct relationship with them, doing a lot of one-on-one coaching with them, running leadership
Cool.
workshops with them, really trying to empower and develop that next generation of leaders so that we
Yeah.
can hit that more explosive growth, right?
For sure. That's a fun phase, dude. When you get to the phase of when you're forced off the doors, you know what I mean? I feel like a lot of reps, a lot of like early leaders, like look at their upper echelon leaders and how they're not knocking as much, and they idealize that and fantasize about that life. Oh, they're making great money and they're not knocking. And so they try to, yeah, dude, I'm sure you deal with it all the time. It's like such a plague. They just romanticize a world that doesn't exist. Some people make it to that level like organically and really. Some people force it and prematurely try to get there, and their income struggles. But it's a weird reality when you reach the point you're at, where it's like, I don't know if you prefer the role you're in and enjoy it more versus just the independence of getting on the doors and selling. But it's a milestone for sure when you're like, wow, like I genuinely can't knock doors. Like I have too much to do, too many people relying on me. And you start to think bigger. Like you start to think as a company man versus a sales rep. You're like, okay, the company needs X. My people need this. There's enough on my plate in that bucket, those buckets, I should say, to where, like you said, I can only pop in a little deal here and there. But how's that transition been for you? Because obviously I would assume you spent, even though you've been in leadership, you've probably been knocking for years, and then now you're running stuff.
Oh, yeah. Really, it's just been the last like year that I've been kind of off of the doors. It's been an interesting transition. Reps kind of have this assumption that it's better to be off of the doors, right? Because
Totally.
I'm knocking it, but knocking doors is way more fun than be like, I'm like the guy in the chair now. You know what I mean? Like you're on your laptop all day, you're in an office all day, you're just dealing with the stress and the fires of the region all day.
Yep.
It's fulfilling from the sense of, when you're focused on like leadership development or helping these guys create wins, there's a definitely more fulfilling aspect of it than just going out and selling. But selling is way more fun than being a end guy, right? Like you end up being an administrator in a lot of senses at this point in the game.
Totally.
But, the transition was interesting. I think what you said there is really important, is being forced off the doors instead of like having this idealistic viewpoint that managers shouldn't have to knock doors.
Yeah.
You get a guy who, this is one of the number one traps I've seen all of my new managers fall into. Like every new sales manager, they get overrides for the first time. They're starting to make a bit of a bag on that. And then they immediately take their foot off of the gas, right? Because they're like, oh, there's a level of I've made it, and like complacency, resting on their laurels, when it's like, buddy, you're so far away from that point. The time to transition off of the doors isn't up to you, right? It's not about I'm here, I feel like I've made it, therefore I'm going to choose to spend my time doing other stuff, versus it's like I do a disservice to my team and the people around me when I go invest time onto the doors. And it's not to say that I won't ever, I'm a staunch believer in I will knock the coldest week of the year and I will knock the hottest heat wave of the year. We get some pretty brutal temperatures up here. I was knocking in minus 48 degrees. Last year with our sales team.
Holy.
And I always tell my guys, doesn't matter your position. If it's the coldest day of the year, and if our guys are going to go knocking that, then, as a leader, we have to go and knocking it too. We got to show up and put up, right? Or
Yeah.
if it's like, 35, 38 degrees. So I'm in Celsius, so I don't really know what your conversions are there, but like hot,
Yeah.
35, 38 degrees. It's super hot. Everyone's sweating out there. The leaders, they need to be out there and at least show like I'm willing to do what I'm asking you to do. But, so many leaders, they get caught in that trap. They take their foot off the gas too soon. You don't get to choose when it's time. It's the market and your team is going to regulate that for you.
100%, man. Yeah, it's a funny one to watch. I shouldn't say funny, but it's just like, buddy, you're not there yet, buddy. Like, I understand you're getting some overrides. Like, it's nice. Like, yeah, you're getting rewarded for the fruits of your managerial labors. However, like, make some big boy money, keep knocking, and people are looking to you because your sales ability has been one major tier to get you to where you're at right now. Like, don't lose that, and don't lose the respect of the team, because don't be the guy in the chariot behind whipping. Be the one out front pulling always, until you are literally forced to. Which, if you continue on that path of real growth, it'll happen. And you're going to miss those days of simplicity where it's just you going out, selling. When you're in the level that you're at now, there's so much that you can't control in door-to-door sales, but there's so much more you can't control in upper leadership. Well, you know what I mean? Like, you're dealing with one customer, maybe a couple operational issues as a sales rep. You're dealing with 5, 10 plus moody leaders. You're dealing with all of their reps and all of their operational issues and all the business issues that are going on above you that they don't realize is happening. And you're just like, dude, I miss when I was just feeling lazy knocking doors and all I had to do was just get out of my car. I miss those days. Those were easy. And you do it and you go make money. Yeah, totally, dude. Well, we'll wrap up here soon. 2 more things. One, are you coming to Door Con Canada?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys got to get me on the stage.
Yeah, dude. Let me talk. I'm going to talk to Sam after this podcast. I want to get you some affiliate links and codes. You and your team, you guys can promote it. You guys can earn some money for doing so. We definitely would need your assistance there. And yeah, dude, I think Door Con Canada and the solar industry is going to be a big pull for people, not just in Canada, but outside of Canada as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing you there. If I don't see you at any event prior, it'll be fun to meet you there. One last thing, dude, if you, I like kind of ending on this question. If you were to leave the industry today, Dunzo, going to go lay bricks with the family, run the family business, what would be the biggest 1 or 2 takeaways that you've learned over the last 8+ years that you would implement and apply for the rest of your life?
Oh man, it's a good question. Number 1 has got to be resiliency. You know what I mean? Be okay with, eating crap 95% of the time, and in service of small wins, and having learned to fall in love with the process, right? Challenges are not bad things. They're an exciting opportunity to solve a problem. That's got to be number 1 for me.
For sure. Smart.
Number 2, I would say one of the really big takeaways that I've gotten from door to door is like, don't take yourself so seriously. Take your opportunity seriously, but don't take yourself so seriously, right? It's okay to have fun along the way. And when bad stuff happens, laugh about it, have a smile on your face. It's not that serious.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. The people that take this job and themselves too seriously are gone within a matter of days, dude. You got to be lighthearted. You got to be fun. You got to make it fun. You got to gamify it. I love it, dude. Those are super smart. I love door to door because, kind of going back to your first. Oh, whoa! You just had a full. You see that? Whoa! Yeah, whoa! Our lights are flickering. That's wild. Well, I was like, what was I going to say again? Okay, studio, you do your thing. I'm digging the vibes in here. Door to door is cool, going back to your resilience, because like you could go out, fight some demons and have just the best day. You get some leads, you close some same days, you make some money, you're driving home and you just feel that seller's high, you're on top of the world. Then you go to bed, wake up, and you got to do it again. Those demons are back, all the jitters are back, and you have to, it's not just like, You have to continually push and prove to yourself day in and day out. And what's crazy is like, you can have days where you're just like, dude, I'm really good at this. And then you wake up the next morning and that feeling is gone. And you're just like, how did I do that? How did I do that? And you have to just every day keep pushing and keep proving to yourself. And it's fun because like you said, you know, regardless of where life takes you, that skill set of having to push and prove every day, regardless of yesterday's results, will propel you and push you far in life in whatever endeavor you do. So it's cool, man. But Tim, thanks for hopping on, dude. I can tell you're a good leader, good sales rep, and you got a lot good going on up there in Canada. If anyone listened to this and they enjoy what you had to say and want to follow along on social media, maybe you or your company, where can they find you?
Check me out on IG at It's Timmy V. So ITSTIMMYV. You can check out my region sales page as well at Canadian Solar Pros. And you can check out the company at Firefly Solar.
Nice, dude. I'll shoot you a follow after this as well. But Tim Veldman, everyone, thanks for hopping on, Tim. We appreciate you, and crush it up there in Canada, dude.